I heard my own son say it. We all agreed, Mom. You're not welcome at the wedding. My fingers clutched the chair, but my voice stayed calm, years of silence layering into quiet strength. I returned home that night and pulled out a lottery ticket they had mocked me with, only to realize it wasn't just a joke. It was my turning point. What followed changed everything. And trust me, this story is just getting started. Before I continue the story, please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Father's Day had always been a quiet affair since Charles passed, but this year, Silas and Zinnia insisted I join them for lunch at their home. The kids would love to see you, Silas said. I could tell he meant it. I wasn't so sure about Zinnia. Their house in the Houston suburbs buzzed with energy. Candles on the table, chicken roasting in the oven, laughter echoing down the hallway. When I arrived, my grandson, Theo, ran into my arms. "Grandma!" he squealed. That was the best part. Zinnia followed, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Hi, Lurleen," she said, kissing the air beside my cheek. Her voice was pleasant, but her eyes didn't quite meet mine. I handed over the banana pudding I made, the one Silas always loved growing up. Zinnia took it, smiled politely, and set it aside without comment. I took a seat by the window, watching the children play outside. The air smelled of barbecue and lavender-scented candles. Zinnia's touch. Lunch was lively. Zinnia's father, Hank, sat at the head of the table, booming with jokes. The table clinked with silverware and soft laughter. I found myself smiling despite the tightness in my chest. Then Silas stood up. "We have a surprise," he said, his hand resting proudly on Hank's shoulder. "Dad, we're sending you and Mom on a 2-week Alaskan cruise." A brochure was passed around. Glaciers, whales, northern lights. Cheers erupted. Even the kids clapped. Zinnia recorded everything on her phone, eyes glistening with pride. Then, as the applause faded, Silas turned toward me. "And for you, Mom?" He handed me a plain white envelope. I opened it. Inside was a single scratch-off lottery ticket. No note, no explanation, just a ticket. I looked up. No one met my eyes. I managed a quiet, "Thank you," unsure if anyone even heard me. Zinnia stood and raised her glass. "To all the wonderful fathers here," she began. "To my dad, the best grandpa our kids could ask for." Her eyes twinkled as she spoke. "And to Silas, for being an incredible husband and father." The room echoed with toasts. But no one mentioned Charles, my husband, Silas's father. His name hung in the air like forgotten perfume, and certainly no one mentioned me. I glanced at my lottery ticket. A blue corner bent in my hand. No one said anything, but I saw the flicker in Aunt Ria's eyes across the table. She noticed, and she said nothing. Later, as people lingered with pie and second glasses of sweet tea, I sat back and watched. Zinnia's mother, Elaine, sat laughing with the kids. Zinnia leaned in, whispered something, and they both laughed again. I couldn't hear the words, but I recognized the tilt of Zinnia's head, the glance in my direction. It wasn't always like this. Once, I was the one sitting at the center of that table, holding babies, offering seconds, being needed. Now I was just present, like the floral wallpaper, familiar but mostly ignored. I remembered last Mother's Day. Elaine received a necklace with each grandchild's birthstone. I got a mug. It read, "Number 1 Grandma." From the dollar store, probably. Still had the sticker on the bottom. I didn't say anything then either. As the afternoon faded, the sun warmed the front porch where we all gathered for photos. Zinnia arranged everyone quickly, calling out names. "Silas, come next to me. Theo and Maisie here." "Dad, front and center." I hovered nearby, waiting. "Okay," Zinnia called. "Just the nuclear family, please." Just the nuclear family. I stepped back without a word, the gravel crunching under my sandals. I watched through the viewfinder of her phone as the picture snapped. Then I noticed no one had saved me a seat. I stood to the side, holding my purse in one hand and the lottery ticket in the other. I smiled as if I belonged there. And I suppose for that moment I did. I stood there with a smile so rehearsed it almost felt real. The living room buzzed with low chatter, glasses clinking faintly in the background. I sat on a side chair tucked into the corner, the cushion too firm for comfort, a tiny plate of peach cobbler untouched on my lap. The voices blended around me. Zinnia's father, her sister, someone from their church group, all laughing over cruise itineraries and excursions. My own son Silas stood with them, nodding as if he were part of their family more than mine. I picked at the crust of the cobbler with a plastic fork, pretending to enjoy the moment. No one looked my way, not really. A few had, earlier, during the toast and the gift reveal, but that was before dessert. Now I was wallpaper again, present, but easily ignored. A silence settled in my chest, not the kind that hurts outright, but the kind that spread slowly, like fog filling a valley. I had become used to these small absences, but they still found ways to surprise me. I wandered into the kitchen, needing to rinse the stickiness off my fingers. The room was cooler here, the scent of vanilla candles mixing with lemon cleaner. I dried my hands on a dish towel, just as my phone vibrated in my pocket. A quick check. It was Zinnia's Instagram story. I tapped it open. There she was, glowing under fairy lights, her arm linked with her father's. "Grateful for the best example of what a dad should be," the caption read. A cascade of heart emojis followed. The camera panned across the patio to show the table still cluttered with half-eaten cake and sparkling cider, laughter echoing in the background. There was no sign of Silas's father, no mention of him, and certainly nothing of me. I felt something shift in my throat, like a sigh that forgot how to leave. I locked my phone and slid it back into my pocket, pretending I hadn't seen anything at all. But my fingers curled into fists inside my cardigan, the kind of tightness that doesn't release even when you unclench. The back door creaked as I stepped outside, drawn by the cool air and the muffled laughter. I didn't mean to eavesdrop. I was just there, walking past the hydrangeas, tracing the stones along the garden path. Then I heard Zinnia's voice. "She's so needy," she said, laughter threading her words. "Always acts like she sacrificed everything." "It's emotionally draining," her sister snorted. "It's like, we get it. You were a single mom for a bit." Zinnia lowered her voice, but not enough. "Silas keeps inviting her because he feels guilty. Honestly, she clings to us like we're her lifeline." I stopped walking. My shoes crunched the gravel beneath me, but they didn't hear. I backed away before they noticed I was there. I didn't cry. I just stood in the dark with a garden light flickering beside me, blinking slowly like a warning. Inside, the house shimmered with light and the clinking of dessert forks, but inside me, something dimmed. I sat back down in the same stiff chair I'd left, folding my arms tightly. The plate of peach cobbler remained untouched. There was no confrontation, no dramatic scene, just a closing of doors inside me, a quiet folding inward. I remembered what Charles used to say when people were unkind or unjust. Your silence can be your strongest answer. He was right. You don't always need to shout to make a statement. Sometimes the loudest thing you can do is leave. I checked the time on my watch, then stood. No one noticed as I collected my purse, gently pushed in the chair, and moved toward the front door. My steps were soft, measured, unremarkable. The night air met me like an old friend, crisp and familiar. I unlocked the car, sat in the driver's seat, and let my head fall against the steering wheel. The engine wasn't running. The silence was invisible. That's the word that floated to the surface. Not hurt, not furious, just invisible. Before I turned the key, I reached into my purse and pulled out the lottery ticket, the one I hadn't looked at all day. It was folded in half, creased where my fingers had clutched it during the photo, the toast, the whispering. I stared at it for a long moment, then whispered to no one. Let's see if the universe noticed me. I put the car in drive, easing away from the curb, headlights slicing through the quiet street ahead. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound in my kitchen that morning. Sunlight filtered through the blinds, casting thin golden bars across the countertop where I laid out a modest breakfast: one boiled egg, a slice of toast, and a cup of weak coffee. I didn't have much of an appetite. The leftover cake box from the night before sat unopened. No texts, no missed calls. My phone remained face down on the table, as if avoiding me too. I sat down slowly, the chair creaking beneath me. The silence didn't comfort me. It amplified everything I had pushed down the night before. Every clink of the spoon, every tick of the clock echoed like a taunt. I traced the edge of my cup with one finger, recalling how Zinnia had smiled so brightly when giving her father that cruise. And how she never even looked my way, not once. The smell of ink and stale office air clung to the memory as if it had just happened. I could still feel the polyester of my slacks and the rigid arch support in my heels. I was in my paralegal uniform, sitting across from Mr. Halpern in his dim office with those horrible vertical blinds that never quite closed right. "You're making a mistake, Lurleen," he'd said, pushing his glasses up his nose with a sigh. "You're sharp, reliable. You've got a future here." But all I could think about was the tiny pair of lungs struggling to breathe through another asthma attack. Silas was 6 then, fragile, coughing so hard his little body shook. "I have to be home with him," I'd said, my voice firm but my stomach churning. "He needs me." Mr. Halpern had nodded. "Kids grow up. One day he won't need you, and you'll wish you'd kept something for yourself." I packed my things that same day. That evening, I held Silas on my lap in our 1980s duplex, rocking slowly as his breathing steadied. The smell of Vicks Vapor Rub and macaroni filled the room. I never regretted it, not once. But I did wonder, sometimes, if Mr. Halpern had been right. I closed my eyes, and the memory rushed in uninvited. Silas, 9 years old, his eyes brimming with tears after I'd missed his school play to take a night shift job at the grocery store. "I know you do everything for me," he whispered, wrapping his arms around my waist. "I'll take care of you one day, Mom. I won't forget this. Ever." That promise had been a lifeline in the harder years. I clung to it when my car broke down and I couldn't afford repairs, when birthdays came and went with only a card in the mail, when I was told, again and again, that motherhood didn't come with pensions. Now it looped in my mind like a song with a bitter tune, not out of malice, just disbelief. How had we gotten so far from that night? Still no call, not even a ... typing bubble. I looked at my phone for the 5th time before placing its screen down again. My finger hovered over Silas's name. I thought of sending a message, just to say good morning or to ask how the kids were. "Not this time," I whispered to myself. I folded my hands in my lap and waited for the silence to pass. That ticket. It sat on the edge of the table, half covered by a grocery store receipt. I picked it up, turning it over once before grabbing my phone. My heart wasn't in it. I just wanted to distract myself, maybe even laugh at the absurdity of it all. A joke gift, Zinnia had called it. Something cheap and thoughtless to mark my place at the table. I typed in the lottery website and pulled up last night's numbers. First number, match. Second, match. My breath caught. Third, fourth, fifth, all match. My fingers began to shake. I double-checked, then triple-checked. The Powerball matched too. 120 million? The words escaped my lips before I could stop them. I stood up too fast, the chair scraping loudly across the floor. My knees gave slightly, and I had to brace myself against the countertop. I looked down at the slip of paper in my hand, now trembling like a leaf in a storm. And then I dropped it. I stared at my phone, thumb hovering over Silas's name. My fingers trembled slightly, not from the lottery ticket tucked in my kitchen drawer, But from the weight of everything I hadn't said, I wanted to tell him. Maybe not everything, not just yet. Just something. Just enough. Maybe it would light something in his mind. I tapped the screen and held the phone to my ear. "Hey, Mom," he answered, but his voice had that distracted clip to it. "Can this wait? I'm kind of in the middle of something." My heart didn't sink. It folded, neatly, like a shirt I used to press for him in middle school. "It's nothing urgent," I said. "Just wanted to hear your voice." "Oh, okay, we'll catch up later. Love you," he replied, the words light as air, already moving on. "Love you too," I whispered to the silence. I stared at the dark screen for a long time, the ache settling quietly into my ribs. Later that afternoon, I drove out to grab some groceries. I hadn't been planning to, but the stillness of the house was too loud. Pasadena had that sticky summer heat pressing against your skin like a reminder. You're not young anymore. In the parking lot, I saw Zinnia. She stood near the entrance with one of our neighbors. Cheryl, I think. Zinnia wore that effortless sundress look she favored, her hair swept up like she didn't care but somehow looked perfect. I was just about to wave when I heard her laugh. Can you believe it? All these years being bitter and bam, a scratch ticket. Guess she finally got lucky for once, just not with raising her son. Cheryl didn't laugh. She glanced around, her eyes meeting mine before quickly darting away. Zinnia hadn't seen me, or maybe she had. I stood frozen beside my car, one hand gripping the strap of my purse so tightly it left red marks in my palm. The air felt hotter than before. She hadn't just insulted me, she had gutted me. That evening, I found myself driving to Silas's house. I didn't text. I didn't call. I needed to see him, to see if his eyes still held the boy who once promised he'd take care of me. Zinnia wasn't home. The kids were at a friend's house. Silas opened the door, surprised but not unkind. "Mom, everything okay?" I stepped inside. "Can we talk?" He nodded and led me to the living room, but didn't sit. Neither did I. "I overheard Zinnia at the store today," I began, voice steady, measured. "She was speaking to Cheryl. She said I was bitter, that I only got lucky with the lottery, certainly not with raising you." Silas sighed. He rubbed his eyes. "Mom, Zinnia's under a lot of stress. You know how she gets. She doesn't mean things the way they sound." My mouth went dry. "She called me emotionally draining the night of the party," I added. "I didn't tell you then, but I heard it." He looked away. "She's not perfect, but she tries. Sometimes you read into things, Mom." I felt it then, that invisible thread between us stretch, thin and strained. "She tries," I repeated softly. "But does she respect me, Silas?" He didn't answer. That said enough. Driving home, I didn't turn on the radio. The hum of the road was music enough. He didn't see it. Or maybe, he didn't want to. Just like when he was 12 and I warned him about Kyle, the neighborhood kid who stole from his backpack. Silas swore Kyle was his friend until Kyle took Silas's Nintendo and vanished. Back then, I let Silas learn the hard way. Maybe this time would be no different. Maybe it had to be. At a red light, I unlocked my phone and opened the message thread with Silas. My fingers hovered above the keyboard before they started typing. "You don't have to believe me now. But when you start to see it, I hope it's not too late." I stared at the message. Then I deleted it. Then I typed it again. And this time, I hit send. I brought a simple casserole, the kind you don't need a recipe for, just memory and instinct. It sat in an old green Tupperware that had outlasted both my marriages and most of my appliances. The moment I stepped through the door at Zinnia's cousin's house, I could feel the undertone humming beneath the cheerful brunch chatter. Zinnia's voice sliced through the clatter of cutlery. Let's all chip in for Mom's retirement plan. She brought the old Tupperware. Some chuckled. A few looked down, avoiding my eyes. I smiled, barely. I placed the casserole on the table next to trays of catered food in gleaming aluminum pans. No one touched it. Later, we gathered around the dining table, half-eaten quiches and syrupy fruit salad between us. Talk shifted to a family vacation. Cancun this time, or maybe Arizona. I nodded along, trying to feel included. Well, Zinnia's mom will love the spa, one of the cousins chimed. I opened my mouth, hesitating. Zinnia talked over me, again, describing the hotel in vivid detail. I tried again, softer this time. I'd like to be removed from the group thread, please. Silence. Forks paused mid-air. Even Silas blinked at me like I'd spoken in code. I'll still love hearing about it, I added. But not through 10 message chains. Zinnia muttered something under her breath and turned away. After the meal, I walked past the hallway and heard Zinnia speaking low and fast to one of her cousins. She always wants drama, then says we exclude her. It's exhausting. She said that? The cousin asked. She's too fragile for honesty. Everything is a personal attack. I stepped back, unseen. Later, that same cousin found me near the coat rack. She thinks I can't handle honesty, I said, repeating Zinnia's words like a note from a stranger. The cousin frowned, unsure how to respond. I see, I said gently and smiled like it cost nothing. In the kitchen, I washed dishes with practiced rhythm. My hands moved while my mind drifted. Zinnia walked in, leaned on the counter with that sweet-laced tone she used when cameras weren't rolling. Don't take it all so personal, Lurleen. We joke because we love. I dried my hands and looked her square in the eye. You joke because you assume I'll stay silent. She blinked. Her smile faltered for the first time that day. I'm not angry, I added, but I am done pretending I don't notice. She left without a word. That night I sat at my kitchen table. The light was soft, the tea warm. I pulled out my journal, its pages worn from years of near-meaningless entries, shopping lists, weather notes, to-do lists I never meant to do. This time I wrote with purpose. This isn't silence from weakness, I penned slowly. It's the sound of boundaries finally being drawn. The line wasn't bold, but it was mine. I found out the way anyone does these days, by accident, through someone else's smile. My cousin Noreen leaned over after service, her voice laced with excitement. Isn't that surprise party idea cute? I love the balloon wall plan. I blinked, unsure how to respond. What surprise party? For Silas, of course. Zinnia's been planning it for weeks in that group thread. Oh, she paused. Weren't you? I didn't need her to finish. Later, in the car, I opened my phone and scrolled through my threads. The Family Fun Squad chat was gone, erased, like I'd never been part of it. I closed my eyes, the bitter taste of exclusion sitting on my tongue like aspirin swallowed dry. So that's how she plays this game. Back home, I stared at my phone for a long time, holding it like it might burn through my skin. I didn't want to call Silas, not really. But there was a weight in my chest, a need to unburden, to say something before the silence swallowed me whole again. He didn't answer, so I left a voicemail, my voice steadier than I expected. Silas, I may not be perfect. I've made mistakes, sure, but erasing me from your life? That's not love, it's strategy. And it's not yours. You'll realize too late what this silence cost you. And me. I didn't cry. I just let the words go, like setting down a heavy box you've carried too long. Sunday coffee hour at church was always noisy, filled with laughter and bad decaf. But this time, the hum dimmed into something meaner. Zinnia stood near the cookie table, speaking to a small group. You know how some older women just make everything about themselves? She said, lightly. A woman next to me murmured, Is she talking about you? I didn't hesitate. I walked up, calm as you like, heart pounding under my cardigan. If setting boundaries is manipulative, I said, then maybe I should start being a little more dangerous. Gasps. Someone dropped a spoon. Zinnia's smirk faded like morning fog. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table and cried. Not from weakness, but from something else entirely. Release. I lit a candle and pulled out an old family photo from the side drawer. Carefully, I tore away the part that had just me and Zinnia. I set it in a ceramic dish and lit a match. Some things, I've learned, don't deserve to be archived. The next day, a message blinked on my phone. From Silas. Let's talk sometime. Not an apology, but something. I didn't respond. Instead, I looked at my reflection in the hallway mirror. They'll learn I'm not one to erase, I whispered. The call came from my niece, Janine, while I was clipping rose stems in the backyard. Aunt Lurleen, just thought you should know. They're having some kind of family meeting this Saturday. At that event, space Zinnia likes to rent for birthdays. I paused mid-snip. Family meeting? Realignment, she called it. Said she's gathering folks to reassess things. I didn't need details. The word realignment was enough. No invitation had come my way. Not a whisper, not a hint. Just silence, weaponized and sharpened like a knife. As I hung up, I stared at the roses in my hand, red and blooming, thorned at the edges. I understood them now more than ever. Silas came by that afternoon. He smelled of fresh cologne and stress, always in a hurry these days. I was thinking, he said, pulling out a folded brochure from his back pocket. Maybe we should simplify things, legally. I raised an eyebrow. Simplify? Like, I could help manage stuff. Finances. In case anything ever happened. He didn't say the words, but they sat in the air like smoke. Power of attorney. I took a sip of my sweet tea, keeping my voice calm. You mean in case I become inconvenient? He blinked. No, Mom. It's just easier. We'd know everything's covered. I smiled thinly. I've carried all of you, Silas. Every scraped knee, every unpaid bill, every lost sleep. And now you want the deed to my spine. His jaw clenched and he looked away. Think about it. I will, I said, but you won't like what I decide. 2 days later, I returned home earlier than usual. The door was locked, but I knew something was off. Intuition born from years of parenting and womanhood. I walked quietly down the hall. From the bedroom, rustling, I stepped inside. Zinnia stood by my dresser drawer, a folder in her hands. My folder. Inside it, copies of lottery confirmation emails, a photo of the check, bank letters. She turned, startled but not ashamed. You're keeping secrets from your own family? She said. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't need to. You were never looking for truth, Zinnia, just control. We stood in silence. Then she shoved the folder down, brushed past me like nothing had happened, but everything had changed. That night, I called my lawyer. I need firewalls, I said. The strong kind. He didn't ask questions, just said, I'll draw up the papers. Later, I left Janine a voicemail. Thank you for not letting me walk blind. I could almost feel her smile on the other end. By Sunday, I'd bought a fireproof lockbox, moved every important document out of the house, and stashed it in a safety deposit box at the bank. I changed my will. They were playing war in whispers, trying to erase me before I even stopped breathing. Let them. I'd show them what strategy looked like when built in silence. The invitation came tucked into a soft pink envelope with embossed letters. Zinnia's touch, always pretending sweetness when something bitter was brewing underneath. It read, Family dinner. Let's clear the air. Sunday, 6 p.m. She even signed it, with love. I stared at the script for a long time, my fingers tightening around the paper. They wanted a performance? I'd give them one. But this time, I would write the script. I didn't go empty-handed. In my purse was a flash drive and a neatly labeled folder, documents, photos, dates, receipts of what they thought would stay hidden. If they planned to turn the dinner table into a courtroom, I would be the only one bringing evidence. The moment I stepped inside, I knew it was staged. The table was set too perfectly, the smiles too practiced. Zinnia fluttered over like a butterfly with poison in its wings. "So glad you could come," she said, kissing the air next to my cheek. "I'm glad to be here," I replied. "Let's make it a night to remember." The food was untouched when I heard them. From the far end of the table, hushed voices. I tilted my ear just enough to catch them. "She won't even know until the papers are signed," Zinnia whispered. "She's not helpless, you know," Silas responded, voice strained. "We did vote. Don't back out now." My heart didn't break. It burned. My niece, seated beside me, leaned in, her voice barely a breath. "They voted last week about putting you in a care facility. Zinnia made the case, said you were showing signs." I didn't respond. I simply picked up my water glass and took a long, calm sip. I'd cooked for these people, prayed over them, bled for them, and now they were treating me like expired milk. Discardable, inconvenient. When the roast was finally carved and plates filled, I stood. My chair scraped loud against the tile. Everyone looked up. "I brought something," I said, unfolding the folder and placing it in the center of the table. Zinnia's eyes twitched the moment she recognized the photos, her hands in my drawer, my missing gold necklace dangling between her fingers, the forged signature on the notarized paper. "I have more on this flash drive," I said, "and I've made copies." The room froze. Zinnia's voice wavered. "This is taken out of context." "Then explain the context," I said. My niece cleared her throat. "I was there when she found you, Zinnia. Don't pretend it didn't happen." Zinnia's lip quivered. "This is harassment." "No," I said, louder. "This is truth, and truth doesn't whisper, it roars, even if it takes a tired old woman to speak it." Silas pushed his plate away with a clang. "You think this is what a mother does?" he shouted. "You sabotage us? For what? A necklace and your pride?" "You made your choice when you defended theft over your own blood," I said. His face was red now. "You've always played the victim. Maybe you belong in that home." The room gasped. A plate shattered. Someone's child began to cry. "You're no mother to me anymore," he said. And just like that, he left. No coat, no goodbye, just silence and an open door. When it was over, the house emptied out like a popped balloon. My niece stayed behind, gently helping me gather the silverware. "You didn't deserve any of that," she said, tears in her eyes. "I know," I replied, "but sometimes people have to try and break you before they finally show you who you are to them." She nodded. "What do you want to do now?" I looked around at the mess, half-finished wine, a broken plate, and the folder still on the table. "I'm going to clean this up," I said. "Then I'm going to rest, because they thought they broke me tonight, but I saw my worth crystal clear." The lawyer's office was small, tucked behind an old dental practice in Pasadena. Nothing grand, no leather chairs or polished walnut desks, just file boxes stacked in corners and a modest receptionist with a warm smile. I didn't need flair, I needed finality. I sat across from Ms. Ramirez, a younger woman with tired eyes and the kind of voice that didn't flinch when you spoke about betrayal. She handed me the updated paperwork, my will, the trust fund, the transfer of assets. Silas and Zinnia's names were gone. I didn't even pause at the signatures. "I'd like the funds to support adult literacy," I told her, "and some to my niece for seeing me when others didn't." Ms. Ramirez nodded, no questions. Just a gentle, "That's generous." "It's not generosity," I replied. "It's redirection. I'm not taking anything from them. They gave it away." Outside, the sun pressed hard through my windshield, and I sat still, fingers on the steering wheel. The storm had passed, but the debris remained. Still, this moment, was mine. Control wasn't about revenge anymore, as it was about peace. Zinnia got served on a Thursday afternoon. I didn't see the papers go into her hand, but I watched from the porch as she read them. Her lips moved silently, her hands trembling at the edge of the letterhead. She looked up and saw me sitting there, in the wicker chair with the peeling paint and my husband's old army jacket wrapped around me. She didn't come closer, just turned, stiff and unsure, and walked back to her car. It wasn't joy I felt, not satisfaction, just relief. I had fought with words and silence, kindness and warning. She had tested every border I drew. Now the paper spoke for me. Let them feel the weight without my voice behind it. The days after felt still, unnaturally so, like the house held its breath. I spent mornings in the garden, pruning roses that had long outgrown their beds. In the afternoons, I made soup and froze it in batches. My niece stopped by with lemon bars, and we didn't speak of the lawsuit. Just books, and our shared taste in crime dramas. One afternoon, I visited my husband's grave. I brought him the ticket, creased and quiet now, just a slip of paper. I laid it next to his stone and whispered, "They thought it meant escape, but all I ever wanted was to be seen." The wind picked up. I closed my eyes and smiled, hearing his voice in memory. "You never needed permission to shine." The voicemail came on a Sunday night. I didn't recognize the number at first. I almost deleted it, but then, "Mom?" Silas's voice, thick with tears, breathing, pausing. "I don't know where to start. I was scared. I didn't know how to defend you without losing her. And then it just got away from me. You didn't deserve that. Any of it." Silence again. A sniff. "I'm sorry, Mom. I miss you." I listened twice, then a third time. I didn't call him back. Forgiveness is not owed. It's earned. And he had a journey ahead. One that had to start without me rushing to smooth his path again. By Friday, I had a new rhythm. I started volunteering at the senior center just outside Pasadena, cooking for the Tuesday lunches. The room buzzed with chatter and shuffled feet. I found comfort in peeling carrots beside women who had their own long stories, stitched together by sacrifice and survival. My niece came with me sometimes, handing out meals with quiet grace. One afternoon, a woman hugged me and said, "You have the kindest eyes." I smiled, steady. Took me a while to see them myself. They had pushed me to the edge, but when I looked out, I didn't fall. I found the sky. The sun spilled through the blinds like soft butter over toast, and for once I didn't feel the need to chase the morning. I let it come to me. I brewed my coffee slow, leaning into the silence of my own kitchen, not as an echo of loneliness, but a room breathing peace. The folded flyer on the counter reminded me, "Community Senior Cooking Circle, Mondays at 9 a.m. I slipped it into my purse and grabbed my apron. At the community center, they greeted me like they'd been waiting all week. A gentleman named Harold, with a laugh that rumbled like a washing machine, offered me a spot at the dough station. We were baking cinnamon rolls. How fitting. I hadn't made those since Marvin passed, but my hands remembered. As I kneaded, a woman with short silver curls said, "You look like someone who used to feed a houseful." "I did," I replied. And sometimes it fed me right back. Laughter bubbled around me, warm and easy. No one talked over me. No one whispered sideways. I was just there. And that was enough. After class, I sat outside with one of the volunteers, Sarah, a retired nurse with a sharp wit and soft eyes. She mentioned her late husband's sweet tooth, and I found myself sharing the story of Marvin's cinnamon roll sundaes. how he'd sing along to Willie Nelson and get powdered sugar in his mustache. It was the first time I said his name out loud in weeks, and it didn't break me. It built something. Sarah laughed, then sighed. He sounds like a riot. He was, a gentle one. I smiled. I think that's a kind of riot, too. Later that afternoon, while trimming the begonias by the porch, my phone pinged. A message from my niece lit up the screen. Thank you for teaching me that standing up doesn't mean standing alone. I sat down on the steps and stared at the words for a long moment. Then I typed, I taught you right. And that was all that needed saying. The garden glowed orange in the setting sun, everything dipped in gold like it had earned it. I ran my fingers through the soil, feeling the life pushing quietly upward. These hands used to serve, lift, sow, soothe. Now they planted, now they steadied. This soil used to feed others, I whispered. Now it heals me. A wind picked up. Not harsh, just present. I closed my eyes and let it comb through my hair. Inside, I brewed tea, pulled out a blank card, and began writing a letter to an old friend, someone who used to call me every Christmas until the calls stopped, not because I wanted to reminisce, but because I had something new to say. I've traded fear, I wrote, for roots and wings. And for the first time in a long while, I believed it. The sun filtered gently through my living room curtains, casting long golden stripes across the carpet. I wrapped my fingers around a warm cup of tea and watched the light sway softly with the breeze. There was a stillness in the room that I hadn't noticed before. Not an absence, but a presence of peace. It used to be that these moments made me ache with loneliness. Now, they just made me quiet. I let my eyes rest on the old bookshelf by the window. Years ago, it was crammed with PTA handouts, Silas's homework, cookbooks with dog-eared pages. Now, it held plants, a few framed photos, and books I actually wanted to read. The house had changed because I had changed. The pain didn't flare like it used to. Sometimes memories rose up, the laughter in the kitchen, the cold shoulders, the dinner table silence, but they no longer wrapped themselves around my throat. They floated by like a movie I once loved and outgrew. I took another sip of tea and exhaled. Today felt like a Sunday should. I opened the cedar box in my closet, the one I hadn't touched in years. Inside were bundles of letters tied with fading ribbons. The ink had faded too, but I could still read every word. I held one from the year Silas was born. My husband had written it on hospital stationery, looping letters that tried too hard to look strong. You've given us everything, it said. Whatever happens in this life, I'll never let you feel alone. It was strange, the ache that letter brought. Not sharp, but deep. Like pressing a thumb into a bruise you forgot was there. I traced his handwriting with my finger, thinking how often love promises protection but forgets to stay long enough to keep it. Still, the letter didn't feel like a lie. It felt like a memory of someone who meant well and tried. I tucked the bundle back into the box and closed it with care. Letting go didn't mean erasing. It meant choosing what to carry forward. My niece knocked on the back door around 2. She held a grocery bag in one hand and a grin that looked like mischief. I brought the good kind of chocolate chips, she said. We baked like we used to when she was little, music playing, flour dust in the air, cookie dough sneaked by the spoonful. She told me about work, I told her about the garden. We laughed over burnt edges and taste tested more than we packed away. Somewhere between the third batch and cooling rack, I realized this was my home now. Not just the walls or furniture, but the warmth, the ease, the lack of walking on eggshells, no forced smiles, no need to explain myself. Traditions weren't blood-bound. They were built in kitchens, over messy countertops and open hearts. Later that evening, I sat at my writing desk with a pen I hadn't used in months. I pulled out a fresh piece of stationery and began writing. Dear Silas, I never stopped loving you. Even when it hurt. even when your silence screamed louder than your words ever did. I hope one day you find the strength to stand in truth, even if it trembles beneath you. I'll be here, not waiting, but living. When I finished, I folded the letter neatly and slipped it into an envelope. I didn't seal it. I placed it in the memory box, next to his father's letter. I'd said what needed saying. Whether or not it reached him wasn't the point. The peace was in the writing. The dusk painted the sky in watercolor hues. I walked into the garden barefoot, feeling the earth under my feet. The roses were blooming again, late but proud. I knelt beside them, fingertips brushing petals soft as breath. I looked up at the fading sky and whispered, "This is my story, and I'm still writing it." It didn't matter who turned the pages anymore. What mattered was that I hadn't let anyone write the ending for me. The garden was soaked in morning light, and for once, I didn't rush. I let the sun hit my back as I leaned into the soil, brushing my gloved hand gently over a cluster of new blooms. Dew shimmered on the petals, and the air smelled like hope, clean, green, and untouched. My knees ached, my back complained, but I smiled anyway. These weren't aches of despair. These were reminders that I'd made it, that I was still here. For so long I'd felt buried beneath the weight of other people's choices, their silence, their dismissal. But here, in the hush of dawn, I wasn't lost. I was planted. And I had grown. That morning, as I dug into the earth to replant a small marigold, I whispered, "This is mine." I wasn't speaking about the flower. I meant the moment, the peace, my life. Later that afternoon, laughter rose in the air like music. Neighbors gathered in my backyard, a colorful collection of folding chairs and picnic blankets scattered between flower beds. The breeze teased the edges of the tablecloths while children darted through rows of daisies. I poured sweet tea into mismatched mason jars and passed out plates piled high with potato salad and fried chicken. My niece arrived with a surprise tucked under her arm. A photo album with bold lettering across the front. Family reimagined. Inside were snapshots not from Bloodline but from Lifeline. Friends, neighbors, her and me planting that first stubborn tomato. The elderly woman I read to on Thursdays. Faces who had shown up not because they had to, but because they wanted to. When I flipped to the last page, a handwritten note read, "Love isn't limited by biology. It's defined by presence." My breath caught. I looked up at her and nodded, unable to speak. For all the pain Zinnia and Silas had carved, this album, this moment, stitched something whole again. As golden hour crept in, I stood by the garden gate and faced the small crowd. "We don't get to choose who starts our story," I said. "But we do get the pen at the end." I reached into my pocket and pulled out a sealed envelope. It was addressed, but I didn't plan to send it. I held it up, not to make a spectacle, just to acknowledge what it meant. I wrote this to someone I once thought would write my ending, but I've learned the beauty of unfinished sentences, the hope in turning pages. They clapped softly. Some hugged me. A few wept. That night, after the last dish had been washed and the music faded, I sat on the porch swing and watched the moon chase away the last streaks of dusk. I reached out and touched a single bloom from the garden, its petals curling softly toward my hand. "I am here," I whispered. "I am enough." No applause, no audience, just a woman with her chin held steady and her roots finally sunk deep. I looked up. The stars blinked awake, quiet and reassuring. I breathed them in. "My story isn't over," I murmured. And for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of the next chapter. If there's one thing I've learned through this long and painful journey, it's this. Silence doesn't always mean weakness, and love doesn't always come dressed in kindness. Sometimes the hardest part isn't being forgotten, it's forgiving yourself for staying silent too long. But healing begins the moment you reclaim your voice. I want you, wherever you are, To know that boundaries aren't walls, they're bridges to self-respect. That family isn't only about blood, it's about showing up consistently with heart and honesty. And most importantly, your worth is not defined by who sees it. It's defined by how firmly you stand in it. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you loved for your own peace? What did that moment teach you? If this story touched your heart, comment 1 below or let me know where you're watching from. And if it didn't, I'd still love to hear your thoughts. What didn't resonate and why? Your voice matters here. And if you want more stories like this, true, raw, and full of heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There's so much more to share, and I'd love for you to be a part of this journey with me. Until next time, take care, and stand tall in your sunlight.